And we are starting. Hey, everyone. Welcome to our weekly Metal Mentor session where we bring on different incredible people to help us understand what's going on to better ourselves. This week is definitely a jewel of metal. He's like a fine diamond, and it takes millions and millions of years to make a fine diamond, and that's how old he is. Millions and millions of years. Nolan Bushnell is joining us from his laboratory. Nolan, let me just ask you a couple of yes or no questions. You ready? Nolan, let me unmute you. Whoever's got the bird going, either mute it or put it out of its misery. All right, Nolan.
Yes, I'm here.
All right, there you go. I'm just going to ask you a series of yes and no questions real quick. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, first question. Did Steve Jobs work for you?
Yes.
Was Steve Jobs smarter than you?
No.
Did Steve Jobs have bad body odor?
Yes.
Did you grow up as a Mormon?
Yes.
Did you then become a swinger?
I then became a heathen.
A heathen? How do you explain that?
Well, basically, if you're not a Mormon, you're a heathen in the cloth. And so you basically, there's this thing called a Jack Mormon, there's a thing called a Mormon, and then there's things called a non-Mormon. And I became a non-Mormon.
And basically you're kicked out of the community, weren't you?
I absolutely kicked out.
Yeah. And you believe, yes or no, that pedigree in kids, you're quite good at.
Yeah.
You can actually produce pretty damn good kids.
Well, I think that kids, there's genetics, and then there's, environment. And I married very well. And I think that our kids are a great blend of my wife and myself.
And speaking of your wife and yourself, you guys are on two different sides when it comes to politics.
Oh my God, she's got massive Trump derangement syndrome.
This is why you're in your laboratory and she's in the house. She owns the house. You only get a laboratory.
But the lab is much more valuable.
Explain to me the peanut butter and the wine that's behind you.
The peanut butter is what I use to bait the rat traps. We're in an area where whenever I catch a rat, a vacancy sign comes up and other rats come in. So I take probably 3 rats out of my garage a month.
Wow. Okay, and the wine?
I drink it.
Okay. Well, hey, Nolan is joining us, everyone. Now, understand the history of Nolan. Nolan created, of course, the company known as Atari, which I had my Pong shirt on yesterday. And then he went off and created Chuck E. Cheese, created in-car navigation. He created home robotics. He has created so many different companies. Some of them did incredibly well. Others were huge flops. He has gone into the accelerated education direction with one of his companies. And now he's looking at collaborative speaker games. So think playing a collaborative game on your Alexa or your Google or Apple smart device. He has found a way to bring families and friends together in a timed environment to play games, from fantasy to mystery. That's his new venture. But before we dive into what he's doing today, I want to talk about the topic you threw at me a while ago, and that was rat fucking your competition. And you talked to us about diversion and how important at the very beginning of Atari it was to create diversions so your competition didn't duplicate what you were doing. Could you explain to us?
Well, in the early days, Atari was so young and venture capital hadn't been invented yet. And so we started started Atari with $500 of paid in capital, 250 for myself, 250 for my friend. And so we were always underfinanced. And so the other people had bigger factories, better relationships with the market. They had everything. We only had one skill, creativity. And we could out-create them. But then people would, of the Pong games that we built and sold, we only got about 20% of the market. People knocked us off. We didn't have our patents. In those days, it took 3 years to get a patent. And so we basically wanted to just delay people from getting the technology, to understanding, to investing in it. And so I basically had one of my guys buy every hologram that they could find, put it in a dark room, lit them well, and then took some distributors who we knew would immediately talk to the other factories and tell them, and I told them, hey, this video game business is a fad. What's really important is holograms. And what was so funny is that some of them believed it. They didn't invest in learning the video game technology. And at the next trade show, there were a couple of games that just had a hologram tacked to them because, holograms didn't move, anything like that. And I just could see the CEO coming over to the engineering department and say, you got to give me a hologram game. And they were so lame. And,
you would do this with games and chips. You would create fake schematics because, people would actually go in and steal ideas. You deliberately design ways to throw off your competition because of corporate espionage. You knew they were gunning for you, and you were planning it to happen.
Yeah, we bought enough chips that we could have marked anything we wanted to. So what we did is we marked them so that they, not with some cryptic code, we just put it on the wrong chip. So if it was a flip-flop circuit, we'd have it as an AND gate. We knew how to do it, and we'd stuff the boards right. But if somebody just looked at the chips and copied it, they'd build a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't. And we actually bankrupted one of our competitors because they had their whole floor full of games that wouldn't work. And when they declared bankruptcy, we had a champagne party on their front lawn.
Let's talk about your last book, Finding the Next Steve Jobs. People may not know this. Again, Nolan hired Steve. It's the only job Steve had outside Next and Apple Computer. And Steve, so you had both of the Steves that worked at night, and they worked on the game Breakout, I believe, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So you got to hang out with Steve. Of course, you didn't know he was going to become the rock star that he is. He attributed, even in the early 2000s, that he admired and looked up to you, and he was inspired by you and considered you one of his mentors. So if you look at Steve Jobs and the traits that he had, and you have to look for the next Steve Jobs, what are those traits in searching for the next Steve Jobs?
Relentlessness.
Define that.
Once Steve was on a path, he was undissuadable. And innovation fails in a consensus economy. Innovation happens with rogue outliers where you go into a room of 100 people and you say, should I do this? And 99% of them say no. And you say, I'm going to do it anyway.
Wow. So would grit go along with that then, moving forward? You have to have grit?
Absolutely. Grit and relentlessness is the same thing.
So as you look then at this younger generation, let's say under 30, are you seeing that, or are you seeing it what is that age group or that genre of people right now? Where do you see relentlessness and grit?
I see it. I like diversity of experiences, and I like pressure. Like, I tried to put my kids under pressure all the time. They, you know, they'd come and say, "Hey, I want to go to a movie. Can I have some money?" And I'd say no. And they said, "Well, you've got a lot of money." I said, "That's my money. What does that got to do with you?" and I said, I've got some weeds to pull. I got some lawns to mow. Well, don't we hire to do that? I said, "Yeah, but I'd rather not hire it. And I'd rather give you the money if you do it." And so that's at age 8. Before age 8, I'd give them money. After age 8, they had to earn something. There was a quid pro quo. I can't say it. Anyway, and I think that's how people get strong if they're stressed. And that's
Do you
what
see
I
a younger generation? Do you see that younger generation having that stress to make them strong?
They feel entitled, and they've been given too much. Their life's too soft.
So that must shed some concern then. We're specifically talking about the United States, aren't you? You're talking about more Western society, because I know you've traveled around the world.
Well, it's worldwide.
You see that complacency, entitlement amongst all this younger generation globally?
No, first world.
First world.
I mean, very interesting thing. Immigrants from third world countries do extremely well in the United States, particularly if they're not hobbled by illegal status.
Mm-hmm.
But, you talk to people and you find that people who have grit, who come from a crappy country, they do very well in the United States because they've got those disciplines.
Interesting. Hey, Nolan, is there any way you can hold the camera even closer to your face? Maybe not. I don't know. Hey, Nolan Bushnell is joining us. If you have a question or comment, let's dive into it. Let's go to our first question. Dezso, let's unmute you, buddy. And what's your question for Mr. Bushnell?
Hello, Nolan. It's Dezso here.
Dezso, you're one of my favorite people.
Appreciate that so much. You have no idea.
He's one of the smartest. By the way, Dezso, I got to tell you, there's a guy named Jazz Dillon I'm going to hook you up with, and he's working on the next generation of electric airplanes. He just became a little member, so I'm going to make sure you guys connect. Jazz Dillon. Okay? Go ahead. What's your question, buddy?
My question for Nolan is, I've been working on my flying car racing project now for a few years. It's finally at the point where I'm going to pull it out of the closet. So, by the way, I'm in touch with Adam Fisher. He wrote the book Valley of Genius and is a good friend of your daughter, Alyssa. He says hello today. And my question to you is, I want to enter the video game space as kind of a lost leader, the way that, football is a lost leader to John Madden football, and FIFA actual football playing is the marketing arm of video game stuff. So I used to work in the video game business a bit, and things have changed. It's a lot more challenging to get in it now. Where is an entry point that I can enter a game market as a way to monetize the activities that I'm going to do?
Right now, the game business is the reddest of red oceans, particularly apps. You go into the Apple store and you have a panoply of things that you can do. So I'm always looking for blue oceans. And so the question becomes one of, how do you have something that's sufficiently unique that I like to use the word remarkable. That means it's remarkable, that people will remark about it. That means you can get some free advertising through the press.
Yeah.
Because
That I can do.
and so if it's sufficiently remarkable, because cutting through the noise is the trick right now. And you have to have something that's remarkable and something that's different. And so that's the hard part. The quality of the game right now almost doesn't matter. It's the quality of the marketing, and that makes it really, really hard. I mean, the games that I'm doing them strictly because there's a blue ocean around the smart speaker world, and and I'm doing this thing that I'll call it Zoom gaming, where you can play board games over video conferencing. And I think that and that's why am I doing it? Opportunistic.
Yeah, but it's timing right now too. I was just talking with Guy Ferrari today, and Guy's saying that because of COVID, the new series of chefs will be coming from the home kitchen as opposed to the school's kitchens because of this new situation. So the blue ocean idea is perfect. Hey, thanks for asking that, Dezso. Let's go to Jacob. Jacob, what's your question for Nolan?
Yeah, so basically, I think things move pretty quickly. I'm an e-commerce person, and so like every 6 months, there's an entirely new way to get a customers. I'm just curious if, the world changes so fast because of the internet age and the information age. How do you kind of keep up with what's relevant, as opposed to maybe a couple of decades ago? Like, what is the next thing, and then does it change every 6 months? What the trending thing is?
I think you have to really keep your eye to the ground and see what's happening around you, and then always ask yourself, what in the world right now pisses me off, and assume that there's going to be, 1 million people that feel the same way, that are pissed off at the same thing. And if you can solve that piss off in some way or ameliorate it, that's generally a pathway into it. I see you've got Burning Man in the background, and I believe Burning Man is one of the great ways to liquefy your mind. I've had some of the best ideas I've ever had driving home from Burning Man, just because it opens you up to a whole different way of thinking and acting and doing. And so I think you've got a good resonant start at this.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Awesome. Let's go to Austin, brand new metal member. Austin, let me unmute you. What's your question for Nolan?
What's up? Can everybody hear me?
Yep, got you, buddy.
Oh, yeah. Good. So yeah, Nolan, first of all, Ken put us in touch a couple years ago. Thanks for agreeing to speak at one of my blockchain conferences. That was awesome. I'll dive into it. So I know some of your kids actually, Dylan, Brent, some of the other guys. So how do you work with your kids? Like when they come to you like, Dad, I've got this great idea. Do you invest? Do you advise them? Do you get involved in any way?
I would never invest in my kids' businesses.
Right.
For 2 or 3 reasons. First of all, there's links between your kids and you that if you become an investor, all of a sudden, you have a chance of, as Shakespeare says, loan off loses both itself and friend. And borrowing dulls the edge of husbandry. That's double strong with family. What I will introduce my kids to people who will invest, who might invest, and I will endorse them, but I don't want that relationship. I'll sit on their board. I will be brutally honest, and if I think their idea is dumb, I'll tell them. I said, I think that's really a dumb idea, and I'll go through the reasons why. I think that good advice, heartfelt advice, is the most valuable resource that you can have for your kids.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thank you. My kid is still pretty young, but one day I know it's going to come, and I'm sure that Ken and a lot of other dads here have experienced that, where it's like, Dad, I've got this idea, I just need money. So So that's good advice. Thank you.
I got to tell you a story real quick, and I've told it to a few metal guys. When my daughter was born, she was an ugly baby, just an ugly baby. So when people would come up to me going, "Oh, you have such a cute daughter," I go, "No, not at all. But she's got a lot of potential." And I told my daughter that story. I go, "You know what? When you're a baby, you're just an ugly baby." And then when she turned 16, she sent me a picture, and she was in this dress, and she looked stunning. And she went, "Have I reached my potential yet?" And she would always say, she calls me Baba, "I love how honest you are." And it's always made her go to that next level because she knows I never would sugarcoat anything. And I think having somebody like a Nolan in your life that's blatantly and not brutally honest, but somebody that really tells you the truth. Let's face it, the truth will make you cry. Your real friends will tell you the truth and will cry. And finding those real friends are unique. And Nolan is certainly that. Let's go over to Thomas Ma. Thomas, I think, is one of the younger guys in the group. Thomas, how old are you?
26.
And give us real quick, your business, how many employees do you have?
Probably 30 or 40.
And what do you think your revenue is going to be for this year?
Well over 8 figures.
Right, 8 figures. And when did you start the business? How many years ago?
2016.
So in 4 years, that's pretty impressive. It really is. And your primary two clients are TikTok and Instagram, right?
Yeah, we work with TikTok a lot on growing their user base.
So, and do you find your age being a atypical type person you hang out with, where they're very entrepreneurial and having successful businesses, or do you find yourself to be a rarity?
Well, I hang out with a lot of entrepreneurs, and that's who I like to get inspiration from.
You gravitate towards that, but it is rare to find people. Another Chicago guy, by the way, it's rare to find somebody with your type of relentlessness and grit, as Nolan's mentioned, right?
Yeah.
And I would recommend, if you get a chance, see if you can get into YPO. That was very helpful to me because you're around a lot of people that will give you brutal advice. And it's an organization that works really well. I highly recommend it. And you clearly qualify with the size of your business.
Yeah, great suggestion. YPO, Young Presidents Organization, and it's unfortunate. So someone like if you're over 50, you can't get into YPO anymore. Actually, they call it YPO old or gold, which if you take away the G, it stands for YPO old. But if you could do it at a young age, it's a game changer for people. But Thomas, what's your question for Nolan?
What's your advice for the under 30 age group to continue success? For example, like in my case, it's like, I think I've done okay, but I would like to continue even further. Like besides YPO, what are things that I can do to get further?
Well, I think that what you have to think in terms of very, very short timelines, but have a global goal. And look at the businesses that you're in and always ask yourself, what's the headroom? I mean, are we talking about growing into $1 billion business, or is if you continue the way you're doing, you're going to fall into the 15% a year growth factor? And hey, you can work for a long time at 15% growth, and that's great. But a lot of times, the real problem is that the world changes, and whatever you're doing right now is a high probability of being obsolete in 2 years. Mm-hmm. And so you always got to have 10% of your resources on something that's aimed 2 years out. And if you don't do that, you can easily get blindsided.
Wow, that's great advice. So really look deep into the future. Short, well, not deep, 2 to 4 years out, but 2 years, especially in that space, you have no idea what TikTok or Instagram is going to look like 2 years from now. I think it's fascinating what Facebook is launching, their new video platform where you could do a Zoom-like environment, and it's between all their platforms. So you can do a video conference with someone on Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, and Oculus, and bring them all together. I'm fascinated to see how that's all going to work. And they're announcing that soon. Thank you, Thomas. Hey, Nolan, let's kind of move around a little. I love to understand what's inside, since you're on your mobile phone, what's inside this laboratory? Show us around a little. What do you got there?
Okay, I guess this is my monitor suite.
Yeah.
I have two 27-inch monitors and a laptop that drives them. And then I have a
I noticed, by the way,
Amazon-
wait, real quick, you're running off of a Mac, right? You're not a Windows guy.
That's correct. Well, that's not
Reason-
true. That's not
Okay.
true. This is my Windows machine over here. And then I have a Amazon Echo Show right here, and another Echo. And then I have, this is my pile of headphones. And this is my printer. And this is my cup of coffee. And this is my stuff.
And you're going to tell us, Nolan, you know where everything is, right? It's all organized the way you know where it is.
Absolutely. I could build a space shuttle with the parts I have here.
Well, actually, you have more power than the space shuttle.
Oh yeah, and more than that, you got to understand that on the left side here, I can solder, I build shit. I'm deep diving on the Nano, the Arduino Nano right now. I got a whole bunch of Raspberry Pis, and I've got, of course, I always have a few lights going on here. And my whole office here is voice activated. Alexa, garage off. Alexa, garage on. Now, these lights, as an example, Alexa, X-ray off. See, turn them on, turn them off. Everything's under control.
Yeah, that's because turning off lights is a difficult process. So fortunately, you have that all taken care of.
Exactly.
Hey, Nolan, have you done any psychedelics and drugs?
No, I haven't. I've done some shrooms. In fact, I got an OD of shrooms at Burning Man one time where I couldn't ride my bicycle. All I could do was sit and watch everybody go by.
All right, let's go to a few more. We got a lot of questions. I love it. Let's go over to King James. James Golden, what's your question for Nolan?
Nolan, great to see you and the inner recesses of your garage and your mind. I just wanted to share something here. Winston Churchill said success is moving from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm.
I love that statement.
How over the years have you defined or redefined success? How do you deal with failure? And how do you stay relevant in an ever-changing world?
I try, first of all, having a bunch of kids help you stay relevant. You know, I've got 8 children, and they're all very, very quick to give me advice and to be quite brutal when they feel like I'm turning into the old guy that's trying to tell the kids to stay off my lawn. So that helps. The other part is I believe in science fiction. And I think that everything has been invented in science fiction novels because they don't have to worry about the technology. And so I try to read a science fiction book every day, or no, every month. I'm a big user of books on tape so that when I'm working out or driving, I'm listening to a book. And I try to not live my life in the rearview mirror. I'm very, very focused on the project that I'm working on, which that's where I live. I live in my projections. Like I'm working on a project right now that has the potential of being a a couple of $100 million business in a very short time. Will it happen? I don't know, but it's the castle in the sky. I believe that you got to live in the world of the plausible possible. And as my wife says, I build castles in the sky and then I move into them. And so,
Nolan, I just wanted to real quick say something that every entrepreneur needs to pay attention to. And you did it just as a reflex. You're not calling it your ideas, you're calling them projects. Because I've noticed over the last several decades, every entrepreneur that says my idea, they can never kill it when they need to. But if you move it to a project, it's easier to kill a project than your idea or modify a project. So by you calling it a project is such a smart move because mentally it has a different aspect than it would if it's your idea. Does it make sense what I'm saying?
absolutely. In fact, I'll augment it a little bit. I like to say that any asshole that's had a shower has had a good idea. The difference is, what do you do when you get out of the shower? And that you don't own the idea. I mean, somebody that says, hey, he stole my idea. Bullshit. That you're just saying that you were too lazy to work on it and make it your own. And you have to walk up this, I call it walk up the mountain of ownership, to turn an idea into a project and to vet it and to work on it and to understand it. All of a sudden, you have a little bit more ownership of the project, of the idea that's turned into a project. The other thing that I've found is, don't have a project, have projects. And what I do right now is I have a list of businesses that I can start, and they consist of a stack of 4 to 7 page business plans, or they're on Google Docs. And if you only have one idea, there's only one time, and that's now. If you have multiple ideas, all of a sudden one of those ideas will talk to you from the silence, and they'll say, hey, this is the right time. The technology's right. The technology's right priced. Maybe it's you find somebody that wants to work with you who's the right skill set, the right partner. And so, by having that multiplicity is important. Almost, I've had probably 3 pretty significant failures. All 3 of them had the same characteristic. They were not right timed. For example, U-Wink. You remember U-Wink?
Actually, I talked about U-Wink today. I met a bunch of guys that are doing exactly what U-Wink restaurant was. They're doing it now because the technology is readily available today. Yeah.
Our tables cost us $10,000 to $15,000 each, whereas you could do it with a $400, tablet right now, or a $100 tablet if you went Android. And so, it's one of those things where it wasn't right timed. It was too soon.
So, hey, Nolan, I'm going to take you up on your challenge, and that is, where everything is inside your laboratory, right?
Right.
I want you to show me 3 different things. First, I want you to show me a power converter that converts to European or international power, so in a power adapter. So where would one of those be?
Let's see. There's actually a couple of them.
You should know where it is right away. Come on, where is it? You got it. All right. Good job. Next one, Nolan, I want you to show me or show us a VGA cable.
I just threw my VGA cables away.
Okay, good. I was making sure you did that. All right, and then I want you to show us an oscillator. Oh no, an oscilloscope. Show us an oscilloscope.
Oh, I don't have an oscilloscope anymore.
You don't?
I use an interface to a computer.
Can you show us your boss?
Just a second. Excuse me. Say hello to Nancy.
Hi.
Nancy!
Hi there.
Nancy!
I'm really not in a position to see anybody. It's right under your chair.
I'm sorry. Oh, here we go.
And there's the heater. Good. She told you where it was. All right, let's go to a
No,
few
no,
more questions.
I dropped a spoon on the floor.
Yeah, well,
And she was
but she knew where it was. She was
Yeah.
keeping that one track. Let's go to Justin. Justin, I am unmuting you, buddy. Justin, where are you?
I got it. I got
You
it.
got it?
Ken.
All right,
Yeah.
Justin, what is your question for? Are you at
All
the
right.
San Jose airport?
I'm in San Jose. I had to fly for a funeral, so I'm heading home now.
What's the airport looking like right now?
Ghost town. You can actually walk into, there's closed restaurants, but it's like they ran away during an apocalypse. You can run up and there's like the bar with all the bottles is just sitting there. It's bizarre. Anyway, Nolan, thanks, man. I love seeing you in your natural habitat. Just wondering, you mentioned smart speaker gaming and interaction. How is Saint Noir doing? And what really gets your gears going for the next 2, 4, 10 years in terms of tech and opportunities?
Well, right now, St. Noirs, first of all, we won all kinds of awards. We won Innovation of the Year at CES and what have you. We've got 7 awards so far. Sales are great. By the end of this month, you will be able to play, maybe by the 15th of June, you'll be able to play St. Noir on Zoom. And I think that
Why don't you explain what Saint Noir? Why don't you explain what Saint Noir is for people to understand?
Saint Noir is a murder mystery smart speaker game where you are the detective and you are interviewing 12 creepy subjects from a small town called Saint Noir. And there's the sheriff and the librarian and the head of the greasy spoon and what have you. And one of those bastards has committed a murder. And all the suspects have to tell the truth, but the perp can lie. And so the whole game is about asking enough questions of the right people to find out who's telling the truth and who's telling the lie. It's fun. Think of it as...
Sam Cho just said Saint Noir is a great game. My kids love it. That's awesome news. He's happy to hear that. You got fans out there on this, Nolan.
Still a good investment, Nolan?
Pardon?
The gaming company, still a good investment, the gaming company behind St. Noir?
I think so. I'll send you a prospectus.
There you go. Here's Nolan. Nolan's right into it always. He's always there ABCing it right now. Hey, let's go over to Lon Ray. Lon Ray, you were unmuted,
Nolan.
buddy.
Hey, what's up? What's up, Nolan? Hey,
Another one of my favorite people in the world.
Thank you, buddy.
Lon Ray is the man. God, I miss you, guy.
I miss you too, buddy. I miss you too. We're gonna get together when this is over.
Let's
For
do it.
sure. Let's do it. So I sent you a text.
I got to tell you, I'm doing Peloton every other day right now.
Excellent.
45 minutes. Those hot girls are screaming at me.
Love it. We got to get you another version of that.
Okay.
But cool. So great to see you. Thank you. My question is about gamifying fitness. I sent you a text earlier, but literally the tippy board idea we had, project that we had, somebody's on it. So check your text and check that out. But now that we're in in the pandemic and we're seeing how these changes are coming, what do you think about other ways, including, Peloton and other games and other ways to gamify fitness using smart speakers, virtual gatherings, etc.? Anything you see coming down the pike?
Well, the gap with Peloton, of course, is muscle mass and weights.
Right.
And I think that we can create some some genres for smart speakers to be kind of a virtual coach, because, you know, you're swinging those things around and that. What I would like to do, think of a exercise bike that now, instead of having the handlebars fixed, you can guide Pac-Man and pick up all the little dots. And then all of a sudden, when the ghosts come out and are chasing your ass, you have to pedal fast or you can't get away from them. So you can integrate interval training in with the game in a very powerful way that's seamless and fun. And so I feel like that a exercise bike with a game construct could be really good. Yeah.
Which I just found out, Nolan, you created in the very first rowing machines at the Valley Health Clubs, the first gamified exercise. I don't know what you would have called it, but I remember rowing against somebody in the 80s on the rowing machine. You're the guy that created that.
That's correct.
Wow. Hey, Nolan, Lottery's asking you, how do you gamify exercise so you can exercise more? Because you have been 8 months pregnant for the last 5 years.
My wife's a great cook.
Guys, we started the hikes because we were trying to get Nolan in shape, and Nolan says, yep, I'll be on those hikes. He's been on 3 hikes over the last 5 years.
That's not true. I've been on at least 20.
Yeah, all right, maybe 20. I'm just joking around. Thanks, Lon Ray.
Awesome.
Let's go to John Vitale. John Vitale, your question for Nolan. What is it, buddy?
Hey, Nolan. I know that you spent a lot of time in the education space, and you know, now that everybody's home and reconsidering education, is there a new perfect storm or a couple of technologies, or if you were going to replay in the education space, how would you do it right now?
You know, great question, first of all.
Thanks.
I did Brain Rush several years ago and had a horrible time monetizing it. You know, teachers couldn't pay, school districts are so bureaucratic, breaking through, it doesn't work. What I'm thinking of doing is bringing it back to life, because I think I've got a perfect monetization structure. Think of a token with a smart contract. So the Brain Rush lessons are unique in that you cannot complete the lesson unless you know everything that's in the lesson. It takes 10 or 15 minutes. And I want the student who is doing that lesson to get paid in a crypto token for doing that. I want to pay kids to learn. And, you know, if you talk to some of the educational wags, they say, oh, you want to have kids that are self-motivated. Yeah, that's ideal. But the reality is people do things for pay. And think of a kid who's in the inner city who, single parent, doesn't give the kid any money. Do we really expect kids to not go to a movie, not, you know, have an ice cream cone, not do anything until they're 16? Of course not. And so as a result, the only way that a kid in that environment to earn money is illegal. And I think that's a gateway to a non-productive life. Whereas if I can pay people, kids to learn, it'd be easy. And the monetization structure.
Nolan, flip that idea around real quick. Let's not talk about education for kids. How about for prisons and inmates? How can you change the paradigm there? Because I'm assuming if you can help the educational side with kids, there's got to be something you do with inmates.
I'm working with Larson Learning actually in Las Vegas. And we teach, we teach probably 200 inmates every year, or 200 inmates at the time. And we take inmates that are 4 weeks from parole, and then we take them into a halfway house and continue that. And we give them job skills. And we have taken recidivism to almost zero. After going through our program, 87% of them get a job and are still employed 6 months after. So it's highly effective.
Recidivism is one of the biggest issues. And if you can actually change it to that type of level, that's mind blowing.
Yeah, it really is.
As a matter of fact, the investment in that is probably more valuable than doing it in the existing. I'm going to make maybe a bold statement, but the prison structure is by far the worst situation over the current education environment.
All of them are fucking broken.
Yeah. Oh. Okay, let's go over to Big Paul. Let me find you, buddy. There you are. All right,
Nolan.
Big Paul. What's your question for Nolan?
Hi, Nolan. 5 years ago, I saw you in Sydney for a program called Wired for Wonder, and you said that schools were crushing creativity. And one of the things that crushing creativity and curiosity, and one of the things I took away from that speech was you said we should get rid of the desk. Do you still feel that way?
Absolutely.
Why?
Well, no, actually, I think you misquoted. I said we should get rid of classrooms. The stage on the side, the sage on the stage, replaced with the guide on the side. All education should be supplied by computers, and the projects should be augmented, and that's where the teachers come in, because they become the project leaders. Kids should learn how, every high school kid should know how to weld, should know how to solder, should know how to do simple Ohm's law, should know how to create a podcast, should know how to put a short story up on Amazon. There are all kinds of things that kids should do that interface with the world instead of esoteric bullshit.
You tell me one of the first things that you get all the kids that you know to do is open up an eBay account or an Amazon account.
Absolutely.
Yeah, super important. I love that. Hey, Big Paul, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I know you guys all have questions. Make sure you put it inside the chat. Let me go over to Jason, the only Jason in the group. Hey, Jason, what's your question for Nolan?
Hi, Nolan. I haven't got a call from you in a while. Hope you're well.
I'm good.
Good to see you again. I just wanted to, when you spoke at Metal, I think about a year ago, you had mentioned about St. Noir and about investing. I invested into it, and then a few months later, you told me to sell the stock. But hearing you now, should we invest into it again? Because when I did, I put a few thousand, and I got my gain. And so I'm just curious, should we, I'm here to support any Metal member as much as I can. And should we invest into it now? And if so, how do we go about it?
Well, first of all, I got involved with a bunch of Canadian, guys, and did a reverse merger into a shell, and they totally ripped it off. And we were able to rescue it out, and so we've got St. Noir out on a royalty back to that company. But that company was basically really fucked, and I'm so embarrassed to have advised you guys. We reconstituted in a company called Versix, which we're currently on, which is a clean shell. We've raised a little bit of money. If people would like to invest, I'd be more than happy to give you the contact information and the current prospectus.
That'd be great.
I appreciate it. Appreciate yourself.
Thanks, Jason.
And I'll figure out a way to make you an extra good deal since you helped me before.
There you go. I like hearing that. Let's go over to, and again, I'm trying to hit all these. I like how everyone does it at the last minute with their questions. Let me go. Come on. I think John, let me see. I don't know, John, is this John Tsukami? I can't see John anymore. Okay, he fell off. If I'm missing anyone, please let me know or raise your hand. The chat's pretty over. Stephen, let me go over Stephen Arms. Stephen, what's your question for Nolan?
Hey, Nolan, thank you for being here. This is amazing. Your ideas on education, I think, are incredible. I have 4 children, and I would love a lot of help with that. My question to you is this. How can we, as a metal community, work together to help you with your ideas in changing the way education is done? And can we get a list of all of the ideas that you have that maybe we can brainstorm and think through and look at?
Of course, you know, and understand that I believe that ideas are shit, and that execution is everything. And so sharing my scribblings with everybody, I'd be happy to do that. One of the things that I'm kind of looking for is, if I reconstitute Brain Rush, I'm actually looking for a CEO. I'm too old to be CEOs that much right now. I can only do kind of one. And then after that, I do.
Huh? Job. Being a CEO is a tough job.
It's a tough job. But I'm a great chairman.
You're a great mad scientist. Let's go to Ron. Ron, I want to get your question there. Ron Levy. Ron. There you are.
Here I am. I don't know that I actually had a question. I made a comment. Nolan, you just one of the comments just reminded me of a indoor bike that had some hand controls where you can kind of punch and kick over the bikes you were passing and things like that. And that had to have been 15 years ago or even 20 years ago. And as you're talking, it just dawned on me, whoever that was way ahead of their time. But you know, it kept you on the bike, it kept you going.
I love
I mean, right timing is really important. No question about it. Yeah, I think I saw that. It was a little clunky in execution.
Yeah, it was. Okay, hey, let's go real quick to AJ. AJ, you got a question for Nolan? AJ.
Hey, Nolan, how you doing?
I'm good.
Good to see you, man. I was just wondering, do you have any projects that you're involved in right now in the virtual reality space? Anything you're working on there?
Yeah, I'm with Jason. We did a bunch of software for virtual reality in a company called Modal VR, and we sold pieces of it to HTC Vive. That was kind of our point. The problem with VR is that it was hot as a pistol for about a year, and then all of a sudden it became toxic, and so raising money for it just went away because the economics model. And I felt that VR and you know, my son's 2-Bit Circus makes a lot of money on VR things in a public space, and that's fun. I don't think that VR has really caught on in the home, and that's where the mass market and the money is. And so that's kind of an area where I thought I'd take a hiatus on VR, with the exception for the public space.
Hey, by the way, AJ, you want to show Nolan your cool glasses?
At some point, yeah. These aren't them, but I would love to.
All right. Thanks, AJ. Let's go to our last question. I'm going to give it to Nick. Nick, you have the last question for Nolan. What do you got?
Hey, Nolan. Fabulous to see you in your little man cave. Let's talk about facial recognition, right? What's your thoughts on facial recognition? I have a lot of thoughts. I've invested in a company out of Australia that's doing extremely well with it. But what is your thinking about facial recognition? I think there's a lot of privacy issues that are going to go away post-COVID, right? Do you agree with that? And where do you see that?
Well, it was a dark and stormy night. And I'm a nudist. And I decide that I am going to go to a hotel, and I walk into the hotel, and I walk to the elevator, and the elevator opens, and I don't push any buttons because of COVID-19.
Yeah, yeah,
And it goes to a particular floor,
yeah,
and there's a series of LED lights,
yeah.
and I walk down the hall, and the door opens, and I go in, and I have my favorite bottle of Chardonnay,
Yeah.
and a light snack, and I have not interfaced with anybody.
Yeah.
And it all started when I made the reservation.
Yeah.
And it was all enabled by voice or facial recognition.
Yeah.
Nolan, real quick, the nudist part, I'm trying to put this into your puzzle.
What's that?
The nudist part. Why would it matter?
Oh, because, you know, what it says is you're credentialless. You don't need RFID. You don't need any of that.
All right, got it.
It was just to accentuate the point, because I believe that we are moving to a credentialless society.
Right.
Where passports, everything are no longer necessary. It's basically from facial recognition to the cloud, period.
So our company, you look at an iPad, it recognizes you, authenticates you, and then you get access control into a building, for instance, or then you clock in and you clock out of a shift. And what we've done since COVID is we've made everything completely touchless, to your point, right? That's the first thing. And the second thing we're doing right now, which is really exciting, is that we've integrated with a extraordinary thermal camera. So when Nolan turns up in the elevator and he looks at the screen, it knows it's Nolan. It knows to take him to the 36th floor. It measures his temperature. And if his temperature is outside of the acceptable range, he's not allowed to go in the elevator. Same deal for employees in supermarkets, for instance, right? Clock in, clock out, door access with their temperature recorded and monitored in sub-second. That's the timing it takes.
You know, I was on the first airplane into Beijing after the SARS, when you know, China was shut down under SARS. And I went through the Beijing airport, and it was like a ghost town.
Right.
And from the time I got off the airplane till the time I got into a cab, I had my temperature taken 23 times. I counted them.
Right, right.
I just went by IR camera after IR camera after IR camera.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Nolan, I think it sounds like a great idea. Nick, I wanted to compliment you. Your hair looks fabulous. Just want to say, for being at home, you got some nice hair.
Well, thank you so much, Ken.
Hey, can I ask everyone just to turn on their camera or their microphones, and let's all thank Nolan for hanging out with us?
Thanks, Nolan.
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 Thanks, Nolan. Love your perspectives.